Give thanks to the Lord our God and King. His love endures forever. He is good and above all things. His love endures forever. salt like snow. The sun forbear to shine, but God, you call me here below, will be forever mine, will be forever mine. You are forever mine. Feel the Spirit of the Lord this morning. Well, good morning, everybody. I was very pleased Pastor asked me to fill in for him today. And so I thought, well, where's he going to be? He said, going to be at Winterfest, you know, so, but I smell a rat. Kind of reminded me of the story one morning. A mother went to wake her son for church and said, hey, it's time to get ready for church. He said, I'm not going. She said, why not? He said, I'll give you 2 reasons why not. One, they don't like me and I don't like them. She said, well, I'll give you 2 reasons you should be in church. He said, what are they? She said, 1, you're 54 years old, and 2, you're a pastor. So we don't know where Pastor Dave is, but we are really glad that he asked me to come in and speak. And of course, now a lot of you are concerned that I might speak long today. And you know, normally I only speak about 2 hours. But actually today, we heard on the news, I was studying for this, and they said, have you heard what's going on? She said, it's going to be 2 inches of ice where we are. They actually shut the church where I go, they shut it down today. So on the way north, I think from above, right when Baltimore County starts, there's going to be some ice up there. So we brought some clothes. Maybe we're going to stay at Betty's tonight. So, I don't know. But one of the things is, because of, you know, sometimes people can get a little long-winded. Of course, the sister pastor's wife, Wanda, had a talk with me, and she said, look, I want to just give you a little story that happened one time, and maybe it make you kind of chill your message down a little bit. So she said, there's a pastor's wife, her name is Sister Gladys, and she was in the church. She goes to church every morning with her pastor husband, and while sitting in the church, she realized that a lot of people were getting bored, they're starting to get sleepy, and she noticed one gentleman in the back, he was falling asleep, and of course he had fallen completely asleep by the end of the service, and when she got back, she wanted to make sure he wasn't embarrassed. She extended her hand, and she said, hello, I'm glad he's done. And the man replied, lady, you're not the only one. So we'll try to keep it down a little bit. So today I wanted to talk to you about living a God-centered life. There's sometimes when I look at my own life, it's funny because I've been going to this church since I was a little kid. And I remember the ministers up here, and they would minister, and man, the stuff they were saying, I'm like, man, how in the world are they going to keep all those rules, you know? These guys are the holiest people I know. And when I found out they were not really as holy as they are, you know, sometimes they'd be behind the scenes. So we all have things that we have to work on with being a God-centered life. So if you're going to have a God-centered life, you have to ask yourself, well, how do I do that? And I believe everything begins with a thought. You have a thought that, hey, I'm going to be God-centered. And you have to then decide that you're going to make Christ the most important reason for your living. Now, I have a verse here I want to read. It's Philippians 3:13. It's under the ESV. It says, brother, I do not consider that I have made it on my own. But one thing I do, forgetting that what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Jesus Christ. And it really is a struggle at times to live a God-centered life, because we're not perfect. You know, when I was perfect, he walked on water, and he's not here now, except in our spirit. And so really, it really behooves us to make an effort. Really to sit there in the morning, like Betty, when you said you start your day out with devotionals. Now, the difference between a retired devotional, person retired, and people are still working, she reads the whole chapter, and I say, Jesus wept, I'm out the door. So, but I'm still quoting scripture, right? And so I was going to say a prayer before getting started, but Betty did such a beautiful job covering everything this morning. I thought she did a great prayer this morning. So I'm just going to you asked that the message be something that God brings forth. So not my word, but His. You know, I want to tell you a little story when we talk about what is the first thing we need to do when adopting a God-centered life. And I'm a remodeling guy. I remodel houses. That's what I've been doing for 38 years. And I know the first thing we have to do, we have to remodel or renovate our own house. So I heard this really interesting story. It said a lady went to a yard sale.
And she found this beautiful picture of Jesus. And she just fell in love with that picture, bought the picture, didn't care what it cost, she brought it home. She brought it home, she took it where she walked the door, put it right on the wall, right in her foyer, so she could see it when she walked in. But when she went in the living room and sat down, and she thought, well, I can't see that picture of Jesus. So she put it on the other wall, so she could see it when she's sitting on the couch watching TV. And still, when she walked in the kitchen, she couldn't see the picture of Jesus. She loved that picture so much. And so she said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that wall out between the dining room and the foyer. So she had the wall removed, and she had the picture there. And I still wasn't getting it, because when she walked into the dining room, she still couldn't see the picture on that wall. So then she took the wall out between the dining room and said, now I can see that picture of Jesus. Before you know it, by the time she was done, she never had one wall in her whole house. So everywhere she looked, she could focus on Jesus. She could focus on that picture. If you think about our own house, we have a tendency, because we're all busy, we're not walking around in sandals and robes with nothing to do. We're busy people. And it's hard sometimes to keep your mind on Christ and be God-centered. You know what I mean, right? Okay. I mean, we have jobs, we have kids, we have spouses, we have all the things that life just clutters for us. I often will say, you know, when it comes to working out, I try to work out 6 days a week, and I'll get up earlier and go to bed earlier because I want to include that in my life. And I said, you know, you have so much going on in your life, at least you can do is take 1 hour for you. Well, we can change that around and say, at least we can take 1 hour for God. Now, I will tell you that I am preaching to an infallible man. I'm preaching to myself as well, because, you know, it's interesting. I am guilty of not reading the Bible like I should. In fact, I haven't read it in such a way because we read it on tablets and things like that. As a matter of fact, I was telling somebody this morning, today we're actually going to probably see real Bibles because all the kids are gone, the tablets and phones are gone, reading Bible on the phones. And so I couldn't even find my Bible this morning. I thought it was in a box that I had in the area where I kept it, and it wasn't there. So, because what we're doing, I have the Bible app, and we use that on a day-to-day basis, but it really behooves us to read and start our day, just like you said, start with your devotions. Now, the other thing is like, I always love Bible stories. I love the story of David. And David, you know, he was a messed up guy. He was always in trouble. I always say, I'm just like David. God said he was a man after his own heart, but he was always messed up. He looked over the wall, saw Bathsheba, and said, I got an idea. I'm the king. I can send him out on the front lines. And he had her husband killed. Well, he was always doing it, but he knew who God was in his life. Although he wasn't always God-centered, he knew where he could go to repent. And he said, making me a new heart, O Lord. And that's each and every one of us to have that God-centered life. We all have things in our lives right now that we can clean up. And to be able to do that, you're going to see God making me a new heart. And this verse is true to form. It's Ezekiel 18:31-32. Rid yourselves of the offenses you have committed, and get a new heart and a new spirit. Why will you die, people of Israel? I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And really that boils down to, we have to call out to God and really ask him about giving us a new heart. Because I know sometimes my heart's not where it needs to be. And I'm sure we all can look in the mirror and say the same thing. And so then the next thing you do to have a God-centered life, you've got to determine that nothing will separate you from God. You've got to decide that no matter what, you're going to stay the course. Now, I love this story about Joshua. You know, Joshua says he was about to die, and the children of Israel had been faithful to serve God and was desiring to obey him. God had just destroyed 31 kingdoms east of the Jordan by the hand of the Israelites because they were obedient with the faith of God under Joshua's leadership. The Israelites needed to yet conquer the Philistines and the Jezreelites and a large territory of the Canaanites. The land were divided among the tribes, and Joshua spoke to Israel, reminded them that the Lord had given them the rest of all their enemies. He warned them to obey the Lord and his statutes. If they don't, God will not continue to drive their enemies out of their land, and they would quickly vanish from God that he had given them. So I love this part though. You can imagine Joshua, he's on his deathbed. He's watched God do these miraculous things. So he knows that God has always been the center of his life. So he pulls all his leadership together, and he says this: but if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose yourself this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the God of the Amorites in whose land you are now living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. You know, I love that passage. And I wrote a book called Tragedy's Gift, and in front of it, I say, you know, all the things that matter has to be about God. And as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So you got to determine no matter what happens, you're going to stay the course. Now you think about Job. Most of you all know the story of Job. I mean, it got so bad for him, and he was ready to die, and his wife just said, curse God and die. And he said, you speak as a foolish one. Because he knew, as much as he loved his wife, God had to be the center. God had to be the most important thing. And of course, sometimes it is hard to stay the course. It's hard to you trust God. It says, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in God. And you just got to realize, sometimes when you think about trusting God, I was about 4 years ago. And most of you know I had a surgery when I was 32 years old. I had to have my colon taken out. So I have a bag on my side. I've had it for 26 years. And that was a very trying time in my life. I remember it got to the point where I could pray and pray and pray, and nothing was happening, and I was still sick. And I told my father, I said, who was a preacher, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to trust God for this thing. If I don't have the surgery, I'm going to die. The doctor gave me 2 weeks to live. And of course, me being a joking kind of guy, I said, well, Cal, we can think about it. But it was tough to trust God during that time. But I just finally said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and submit to the surgery. If they open me up and find nothing, well, thank God he healed me. And if he didn't, then he would heal me by the surgeon's hand, because he gave them there for a reason. So sometimes you have to be reasonable in your thoughts about that. And of course, another time, about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's been longer than that. Time flies, doesn't it? And I was here, and I developed, no, I think I was still here. I developed what they call stoma hernias. And to correct this problem is a very dangerous surgery. In fact, I could have died as a result. So we went to one doctor, they had the pictures, and they had all the x-rays and stuff, and then the doctor says, you're going to have surgery to have these removed. And he was describing all the dangerous things that could happen to it. And I just felt a peace, because I felt like that God had it under control. And it's funny, because I didn't even think about it. I just let it go. So we went and had an MRI done with the contrast and so on. So when we went back to the doctor, we went back to the doctor to sit and talk about the strategy for going forward with surgery within a few days of that. So he had 2 screens on his desk, and he's going back and forth, he's looking, he's scrolling, he's looking. And he said, you know what, Don, you don't have stoma adhesives. Stoma hernias. God healed me, and I trusted in him, and thank God that that happened.
Amen.
So if you're going through that challenge, then absolutely.
Praise God.
I've seen miracles since I was a child, and if I told you some of the things I've seen, I wouldn't believe you if I did. But so really what it comes down to, we have to transform our thoughts. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Now that's in the NIV, the King James Version says it a little differently. But it's really amazing when we begin to really change your thinking about what your life looks like. What's most important to you? Is it, for me, I'm a business person, I'm always talking about business, I'm always talking about real estate and buying and flipping houses and all that stuff. But the reality is, I need to change that thinking, be more focused on God. Especially, I think if you start, like you said, Betty, in the morning, that's when you'll be more focused throughout the day. And so the other thing is well, how do I change my thinking? How do I do that? And it really boils down to, if you want what you've never had, you've got to do some things you've never done. And for some of us, that's really digging in and studying and getting into the Word and finding out what God says about it. 2 Timothy 2:15 says, study to show thyself approved, a workman needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And it encourages, Solomon said, above all things, get wisdom. And the only way you get wisdom, you got to look into the Scriptures. You got to find out how to figure it out. So I like this verse here in Proverbs 16:16. How much better to get wisdom than gold, to get insight rather than silver. Now back then, their commerce was gold and silver. That was the most important thing. You can imagine what he's saying here, that the most important thing in your life needs to come second. How much more important it is to get wisdom. So I've always been interested in learning and reading and understanding of God. And if you have some challenges with reading, can't read fast enough, they have Bible and tape, they have all kinds of encouraging things that you can listen to. We have to develop a heavenly mindset. To think on the things of Christ each and every day. There's a saying in many of the books that I read, self-development books and things like that, I tell you, you become what you think about most. You've never accomplished any goal by thinking, I'll never accomplish that goal. You didn't get up one morning, some of you may have a new car, and you start thinking about that new car, and you get an image in your mind about it, and next thing you know, it becomes more important. When it goes from here, it goes in your being, you know what's going to happen? You're going to own that car. You're going to figure out a way to do it. You're going to see it. You're going to see yourself in it. You're going to smell it. You know what I mean? Darlene's been looking at cars. Another one. She's been looking at them. And I'm like, that's weird, because Darlene doesn't ever really look at car stuff. So, but that's how you do it. You just got to constantly think of the things of Christ. And then here's the big one. You know that we are like the 5 people that we associate with. And you have to change your circle of friends at times. because they'll bring you down. And, it says, a mirror reflects a man's face, but what he is really like is shown by the kind of friends he chooses. And that is, I wrote the scripture down, but I didn't write what the book was. But, it reminded me, we saw a picture the other day that there was 4 or 5 young boys had thrown a rock over a bridge, and it landed on someone's windshield. And it killed the passenger, father of 4 children. And they had the father of one of the boys on a Dr. Phil show. And he was talking, and he said, this is not my son. This is not a kid that would have done this. He would have never hurt somebody. Why he even went to those guys. But what happened as a result of him being influenced by his friends and influenced by the people he hangs around, he eventually got himself in trouble. He just ended up being the same mess that they're in because he's not separating himself. So I encourage you to think about who am I hanging around with? Who am I talking to? And am I doing the things that they're doing that may not be in keeping with a God-centered life? So anyway, one of the things that I think as a Christian, become approachable. Be a person that's friendly, happy. You got a smile on your face. It's like, I think it was the horse went in the barn to have cows and tea. Why have a long face? And we don't need to walk around with a long face and be unhappy. And when people come to you, be approachable. Like we were going antiquing yesterday, and it was really interesting because this lady, I don't know how the conversation started, but Dorian and I are like old shoes. We'll start talking to people, and they'll just like, we'll find out where the kids are from, where they live, and all this stuff. And the lady started talking about guitar, and she was like, I'm just so excited about Christ. And it was like an immediate connection because of God as being that center. So I encourage you just to be a person that invites that. And then the other thing is, be the Bible that people read. When you are out there, I used to sing a song called Your Life's the Only Bible Some People Will Read. And that is truth. Some people say you can win more people to Christ by living the life. And sometimes people that are in the churches, there are a whole different thing going on outside. And I heard this little story. I thought that was kind of cute. I would like to talk to you about this one here. Since the revival had concluded, the 3 pastors were discussing the results of one another. The Methodist minister says, the revival worked out great. We gained 4 new families. The Baptist preacher said, we did better than that. We gained 6 new families. Well, the Presbyterian pastor said, well, we did even better than that. We got rid of our 10 biggest troublemakers. So you never know who you're sitting with. You know what I mean? So, but that's so true. You just want to be an old shoe kind of person. And then another thing is, as a God-centered individual, if you're excited about something, people say if you're excited, people will come from, if you're on fire, people will come from miles around to watch you burn. So if you're reading the scriptures, you're doing your study, and you're really putting yourself into that God, and you're thinking on things of Christ, and you're getting the grip of what I'm talking about, you will become the minister. Now, I'm not a minister, but I'm a minister, and every one of those are. He says, then the master told the servants, go out to the roads and the country lanes and compel them to come in so that my house will be full. And sometimes we're a little embarrassed, and how we go approach people. And I always do it on a real subtle line where I might just say, I might just be talking to somebody and it might be about the weather, You say, boy, sure glad I trust God. This is what the terrible out there today. And then when you say that, somebody either going to perk up and say, are you a Christian? Are you a person that I can talk to about that? Or if they're not a Christian, they're going to see something different in you. So there's little subtle ways you can start these conversations. Of course, anybody knows I've never had a problem with starting a conversation with anybody, I think, So, and of course, some of the other things that are really important, and this is really a big one, become a giver. And it doesn't always have to be your money. It can be your time, your knowledge, your resources. One of the things that, and I'll say this just to make a point, years ago when I was here, I would always say, I don't always have cash in my pocket. Usually I have the ATM card. Most of us do that today. But every now and then I'll have cash. I always made a commitment. I said, God, whatever the biggest bill is in my pocket, I'm going to give it in church every time. And I won't control what that is. I'm going to make sure I spend that before I get to church on Sunday. And so when I first started doing this, a couple of days afterwards, I had $102 in my pocket. And one of them was a $100 bill. Okay? So I really got tested. I was like, oh man, and that was a tough week that week, but I put it in anyway. So one of the things I encourage you to do is give. And so a couple of weeks ago, I had a $100 bill, and I was up in worship. And a lot of times when I'm playing music, I will put offering in because I'm playing guitar, unless I give it to Darlene if she doesn't play hooky at church. I'm just kidding. So anyway, just kidding. She's there with me. But I was thinking, man, I gotta put this in. So the second service, I gotta put this $100 in there. And I just kept saying, there must be a reason. So afterwards, we went to Panera Bread, and there was this young guy come up, and he says, if you have any money, I need some food. So I kind of blew him off, And I drove around, I stopped, I thought, you know what, I want to see if that guy's still there. So he come walking over, and I waved him over, and I said, what's going on, man? He says, well, my girlfriend and I are homeless, and she's just found out she's pregnant, and we're really going through a tough time. So I gave him $100. He said, are you serious? Are you serious? I said, yeah, I'm serious. I said, that's for you, man. I said, I knew it was holding for a reason. So a lot of them might say, well, gee, Don, he might go out there and spend it on alcohol or drugs or whatever. See, God doesn't. He wants to see where he doesn't want to see, he knows what your heart is, but he wants you to see where your heart is. See, sometimes
Right.
God was testing you, and the interpretation is that he needs to know. It's not about that, it's that you're testing yourself to see where your heart is. So my heart was in giving. What he does with that money, I can't control, but my heart was in the right place. And so as I drove off, I looked in my rearview mirror, and the two of them were hugging. So I knew that it was it gets me emotional now, think about it. I knew that was the real thing. And it makes such a huge difference in someone's life. So being a giver is so important to really releasing your heart to become a God-centered individual. And then so really what it boils down to, and I'm going to close with this, I know you're glad of that, aren't you, so get out of here early. It really boils down to really remodeling your house. I remodel a lot of houses, and everybody's big on the open floor plan, just like I was describing the lady with the picture of Christ. And we need to open up our inside, open up our heart, where we take down all the walls, all the distractions, all the shiny things, all the squirrels that walk by, because I see those all the time. and just remove those out of our lives. And so it really boils down to that. So I know with myself, just in preparing for speaking to you in a few moments today, I said to myself, I need to be more God-centered. I need to really focus my heart and my life and my mind and my resources and my power and everything within me. Because, if you think about it, one day I used to do a lot of speaking at Toastmasters. And one morning I got up and I started typing things that, I said, if I had lived to be 102 years old and I hadn't impacted my fellow man for a good reason, what would it matter? It wouldn't matter if I didn't pass this journey. We went to Williamsburg last year. And it was a rainy day and I was heading to the gym. I love to work out when I'm on vacation, but I don't have to think about business or anything else. And this guy had his hood up, it was raining, pouring down rain, and he says, hey, you got a pair of jumper cables? I said, no, man, I don't. I said, on vacation, I'm just heading to the gym. He was like, sorry I couldn't help you, good luck. So I started going to the gym, make a right, but instead I made a left, went down Advanced Auto, and got a pair of jumper cables. And I started to get the cheap ones, but I figured I've got to get the good ones because I know he's going to be able to start the car with those. So I bought the jumper cables, drove back, and there he was still standing in the rain. He said, he didn't know my name at that time. He said, I've had 9 people come past here, nobody had the ability to help me. And I said, well, I got you some jumper cables, because you went out and bought jumper cables? I said, yeah, it's okay. And he said, really, man? He was really surprised. I said, well, I said, if I don't make a difference in somebody's life when I'm here, what does it matter? What does it matter when we're here? I mean, we get our 410, we might live to be 70, 80, 90, 100 years old. I think some people live to be 105. Hopefully that's me. Would it really matter that we passed this journey? We're going to be in eternity. What does it really matter that we're here? You ever think about that? Why am I here? What is this purpose? So I just challenge you to really think about your life, think about your inner being, and really think about some of the things I talked about today about God-centered living. And if you'd like to just come on up and just kind of circle around if you want. You can join in the altar, and we're going to go ahead and sing I Surrender All. Because I surrender all that we're talking about. Surrendering to Christ and making it. Let's enjoy singing this song.